All right, well, let's touch base with Emily in Australia, who wanted to talk to us about asexuality. Emily, what's on your mind tonight?
Hi. And thanks for bringing up that I want to talk about asexuality, but I'm also ADHD.
Hmm.
And I just want to say, Marie, do you think it took so long for you to get diagnosed because ADHD is seen as a little boy's disease?
I Yeah, like at a social level, yeah, definitely. There's a little echo in the back, or what is that?
Uh, that might be my baby.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
that's fine. Hi,
sure.
baby. Life
He's
happens.
having a
Hello,
little
baby.
talk.
Hi, Emily's baby. Let's see. So yeah, I think factually, yeah, very likely I didn't get diagnosed because of society defining ADHD as hyper boys. Um, Society already socializes people born with vaginas to be compliant, to mask, to sit still. And so if you see a hyperactive boy who has ADHD and a ADHD girl who's quiet, there is more internal distress in that girl because she's holding it all in.
Hmm.
And that was me in my childhood, and nobody saw it because I wasn't expressing it outwards, because I was already taught at a multitude of other levels that it was not okay for me to be big, and that was a constant recurring theme in my childhood, is constantly feeling like I'm too big, I'm too loud, I'm too noisy, I'm too nerdy, nobody likes me. How do I temper this? There was emails with my sister going back and forth about, like, how can I stay calm when I go to youth group? I get all excited and talk, and then people get annoyed, and like, yeah, and just nobody saw it. And then moreover, like, the family system I was born in was not super psychologically savvy, and the school, in the 80s, at least the school I went to, was not as psychologically savvy as how I perceive schools to be now. A lot has changed in society, and we're a little bit more concerned with that. So I think there's a lot of factors. Oh, and then growing up evangelical, of course, because like ADHD, that to some forms of Christianity or religion, that can be a huge threat to their entire structure, because that they think that, like, who you are is just like, that's what God made you to be or something, and so you can't actually have like a thing in your brain that makes you act differently or whatever. So there
All
was
of
just
your
all
behaviors are choices, even and
yeah,
especially the sinful ones.
exactly. Thank you for summarizing up for that for me, because it was hard to put into words. But yeah, I think there was a lot of factors involved in that.
Yeah, I didn't get diagnosed till I was 22, and then I told my parents, and they're like, "No, you're not." I'm like, "Cool, okay."
Thanks. Appreciate your
Yeah.
opinion on
Nah,
my brain.
I originally called because I don't know. I was wondering if there was something. So I'm also asexual, and I was wondering if there was something that just is turned off in my brain that doesn't make me experience sexual attraction, or because I didn't have any trauma or anything. Like, this is just
Hmm.
how I've always been.
That's
Yeah,
a
so
legitimate way to be. Go ahead, Christy.
Absolutely. Well, it's important to recognize that in terms of like a cause or a thing that we could point to on an MRI or something with regards to asexuality, the only thing that we really can say for certain is that there's not a cause, but probably dozens or even hundreds or thousands. I definitely want to echo what Marie said. It's a perfectly valid way to be. It's just a different way of being from the norm, but also in a way, so is everything else.
Yeah.
So I really, really want to recognize that. We don't really know what causes asexuality. You mentioned the idea of trauma, and that's a very complicated notion. Certainly, there are people who experience trauma and then become sort of cut off from their sexuality and may find themselves a home in the aspect community. But also, there are plenty of healthy, happy, wonderful people who have never experienced any sort of trauma to their sexuality, who seem to just be born this way. And perhaps there is a interaction of prenatal hormones as well as some level of socialization throughout life. But that's going to be true of really any major trait. And we can't point towards anything particularly specific. For our conversation tonight, I guess I will highlight that there seems to be a incredible concordance between asexuality and neurodivergence. That might be because neurodivergent people are just more likely to acknowledge their asexuality or to talk about it and to organize themselves around it. But I don't know that that necessarily covers what we see on a statistical level. So we've talked about this episode a couple of times on the show, and I will make sure to have some links in the footnotes, and then I will stop rambling because this is a really interesting question that we don't have a good answer for.
But most importantly, you're okay. You're okay just as you are. I caught myself thinking here, like, would Emily be calling if someone didn't tell her that sexuality was expected of her?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you feel distressed because you feel like you don't match up to society's expectations? Or do you feel distressed because you've always wanted to have sex, but yet you don't, or something like that, you know? So like, that's the interesting thing about psychology, in my opinion, is that most of the DSM, a lot of the criterion have to do with, does the patient experience distress for this symptom in order for that criterion to be fulfilled? And so it's all incredibly subjective. So you get to ask yourself, am I okay with this? Does this feel right inside of me? And if not, what is the direction that I want to go in? And really doing some introspection to see, you know, what might be keeping you from finding that part of yourself.
And I'll just highlight that there's a meaningful difference between distress from a symptom and distress from society's acknowledgement or interaction with that symptom. Not to say that they don't both cause distress, but it's important to recognize what's you and what's your culture, your environment, your family, perhaps.